Bones often form the foundations of our rig. They're one of these objects that when we create them, they actually create their own hierarchy. It's just the way that they are, it's the way that they're kind of a special object. So it's the way that when we build them, it's just automatic. Now, bones can be created one of two ways. And I'm going to show you both ways. I prefer one over the other, and that's because one of them gives us access to a lot of the options. The other one gives us access to some of the options, but they're the exact same tools. So let me show you the way that I usually don't do it. So the way number one, we come across to the Create tab, come along to Systems, and underneath Standard, there's nothing actually else in here. They're just standard systems. We've got this Bones tool. So we click on here. You can see we have some options here. Like I said, this only has a few of the options that are actually available. And if we click once in the viewport, you can see we drag out a bone. If I click again and again and again and again, then right click to end the creation process, you'll notice that bones are still selected. So if I click again in the viewport, I'm actually going to create another bone. So what I'm going to do is just right click to end the creation process, and once again right click to end the tool. We now have some bones, and these sit within a hierarchy. And if we come up to the schematic view and take a look, let's turn off this display option and zoom in, just turn on hierarchy mode, you can see they've created a hierarchy. Now, the other way to create bones is to come up to the animation menu, come on down to Bone Tools and click this, and this gives us a lot more options for creating bones. We have this button here, which is Create Bones. This is actually the exact same tool as bones across here. And in fact, if I click it, this one's going to turn on. So watch, I'm going to click here and boom, this one turns on because it's the exact same thing. So once again, in the scene, in the viewport, we can just click once, click twice, 3 times, 4 times, whatever it takes, and then just right click to end the creation process. When I right click again to end the tool, it's going to end both the tool on Create Bones over here, and it's going to end the tool on Bones over here, because it's exactly the same thing. Now, when we have this selected, you can see we have a number of options down here. And one of these is bone parameters, and you can see if I come down, we have all of this thing here. We have bone object, width. It's exactly the same thing. But like I said, this one only gives you a few options. This one gives you so much more. So I prefer to use this. Let me right click and end this tool, and I'll quickly take you through some of these, which I find are pretty interesting. Let's work down from the top. We have bone edit mode, and what that allows you to do is really edit the position of the bones. And what I mean by that is these bones don't behave like other objects. For instance, if I come across and I'm just going to create a box, I'll just create 3 boxes. There we go. And I'm going to use the select and link tool and make a hierarchy from them. So this guy down at the bottom is the child of this. This is the parent of this one. Likewise, this is the root. If I come in here and move this box is going to move and its child is going to move. It's going to keep the root as it is and nothing else is going to happen. That makes sense. And that makes sense for a hierarchy. So you would expect bones to do the same thing, but they really don't. We can come in here, we can rotate the box, and its child comes along as expected. If we do this with bones, let me do this one here, it behaves as expected. If we come across again to here and I move this moves along, behaves as expected with the child coming along. Now if I do this on bones, it's not as we expect. Instead of moving this point, it's going to actually rotate from its parent. Check this out. So a little bit crazy, not exactly what I was wanting. If I'm wanting to position this bone down here, it won't actually come. Its length is actually set. So how do we get around this? Well, we come to bone edit mode. If I turn on bone edit mode and try and move it, now check it out. It realigns and repositions its parent, and obviously it points to its child at all times. And that makes more sense, but we don't always want to be in this mode, but at least there is a way of doing it. It's just, bones are a special object, so they behave a certain way, and this is one of the ways they behave. Let me just delete out these as we move on. So one of the buttons here, there's a lot of buttons. I would suggest reading up in the manual about them. We will come across them later on. as we rig our character, and I'll go through these. But let me just check out the refine with this guy here. Okay, I'm going to come down, quickly increase the width and height so that you can see this a little bit easier. There you go. So now I'm going to click on refine, and if I click on this bone, it's going to create another bone. Boom. And this is how we refine bones into chains. So we can actually create more bones in here. And if I come up to the schematic view, you can see more bones have been created in this one chain. So that's the refine button. There is the remove bones button. If we come in here and press remove, it will actually remove those out, which is expected, which is great. So we can come in there and add them and remove them as needed. There's bone coloring, and obviously we create bones. They're blue, or this kind of gray blue. If I come in here, we can choose the color, and you can see this updating automatically. Just okay that. And we also have color gradient, which I kind of like. I never really use too often, but we can use it. So let me grab all of these bones. Let me just increase the width and height so we can see them. Looks a bit better. And with all of those selected, you'll notice that gradient coloring is not available. We're not actually able to click it, but if we grab all of the bones, we come in here and we start changing this out. So let me go from green to a red. Okay. And if I apply that gradient, you can see now the bones go from a green to a red. So it doesn't actually change anything on how the bone works or behaves, but it changes the visual appearance of it, which is pretty cool. Another way to change the visual appearance of something, of the bones, is to grab the fins. If I grab one of these, I grab this one and I turn on the fins, and let me increase the size so that you can see them. You can see how this is visually changing the look of the bone. Now, this is a visual change, but it also affects skinning. I'm not a big fan of using these fins because it does affect the skinning and what's called the envelopes of the skin, which we'll get to later. But just be aware that if we do this, it is changing the skinning, but it does also change the look of the bone as well, if that's what you like. So let me just turn those off real quick. Underneath here, we have some more advanced options that I really don't want to get into because they are advanced, and I think they're just a little bit confusing at the moment as we're just starting to use bones. So this is where I'm going to keep our focus. The create bones, we have the bone edit, which we might need, and the sizes of the bones, which is the width and height. And that pretty much wraps up the bone tools. This is how we create things. And we can use the select and link tool. If I come to my schematic view and I just make this a little bit smaller so we can see more. If I wanted to add this bone chain to this one, I can use the select and link tool and click and drag across and put it on here. And you can see now this is all in one hierarchy. So if we rotate this guy, remember moving it's not a good idea unless we turn on bone edit mode. But if we rotate it, that's fine. These bones are going to come along for free because they're connected. And if we rotate any of these bones, they're only going to affect their children because they're parented in this way. And obviously the root now becomes this guy who we can move around. I don't worry about moving the root around at all because he doesn't have a bone to affect. So that's how we can put our bones into a skeletal structure. Even though they create their own hierarchy, we can add bones into a scene, select and link them, and actually create skeletal hierarchies, which we're going to do as we go into rigging Scooter.